Good afternoon. Welcome to This Week at Alabama A&M University. I'm your host, Michael Burns. On July 20th, the Southwestern Athletic Conference announced that they were canceling the 2020 fall sports schedule for all sports, including football, volleyball, soccer, and cross country. Of course, this affects the outlook of Alabama A&M University's season for the 2020-2021 season. And I've been lucky enough to have as my guest today the Director of Athletics for Alabama A&M University, Mr. Bryan Hicks. Also joined by the head coaches for volleyball, Coach Rose Powell, and the head coach for soccer, Emanuel. Hopefully, before the show is over, Coach Connell Maynor of the football team will be able to join us also. But first, let me say thank you to each of you for joining us today on This Week at Alabama A&M.
Thank you for having us, Mike. We really appreciate it.
Hicks, if you'll allow us, I'm sorry. Hicks, you know how we call everybody a coach down in athletics. If you allow me to get started with you, got a couple of questions for you, and then the others can chime in as appropriate as necessary. But first, Mr. Hicks, I want to say, what are the immediate effects that we see at Alabama A&M University with this decision, the short-term and the long-term effects?
Well, the first things first, with our students not being here in the fall, the practice and the time we get a chance to spend with our students and preparing them for the season. But that's kind of like short term. When we went about the decision, we had the health and well-being of our student athletes at the forefront. So that was the main key. So any shortcomings that we were going to have, we wasn't going to separate that from the importance, and our priority is ensuring the safe and well-being for our student athletes. So that was priority number one that we wanted to go out. The short term, it affects us in the fall. The seasons were postponed until the spring semester. And so we hope that as we move forward, first things first, that the pandemic gets some kind of control or monitoring for that, and we can move forward to having a very time-consuming spring semester. But a lot of fun, though.
Yeah.
A lot of fun.
There's going to be a lot of sun packed into those few months of the spring.
That's true.
Calendar, and you've got about 5 months full of possible activities going on.
Possible activity, that's correct.
As I look at that. With conversations with your peers and the ADs and also the university presidents, what other factors played into this besides just trying to negate the spread of COVID-19 amongst your athletes? And staff, I should say, can't exclude them.
It was the impact it would have on our student athletes, the impact it would have on our coaches, the staffs, everyone that's involved. That was it. If we could not protect and have safety amongst ourselves, there was no way we wanted to endanger any kind of spread of this disease, and not knowing the long-term effect of the disease. So it was imperative, it was paramount and in the decision-making and in that process. And I tell you, we've been looking at it since we got that dreaded call back in March, right after the first round of the basketball tournament. Right. So from March to now, we have been constantly in dialogue, trying to figure out what is the best way to move forward. All of us love sports and love the experience that we had from it, but we didn't love it more than we love the student athletes and their experience and what we can do to provide the safety and well-being for them.
Was there any discussion offline with any of the ADs or the presidents that may be holding on to see what the other conferences were going to do?
We stayed abreast to what the others were doing. We really did. But we wasn't going to let that dictate what we did. Okay. We just looked at our individual campus, because our clientele is a little different than most. And we wanted to be direct and effective as we could to make sure that the student athletes of the SWAC conference will be protected. And we stayed true to that.
Coach Powell, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, and that was a unanimous decision, by the way.
Okay.
We all were on the same page about it, and I was really proud of not only the Council of Presidents, the athletic directors, senior women's administration, everybody. we were 100% unanimously on the decision that we made.
Also with us this afternoon is Coach Rose Powell, the head coach of volleyball at Alabama A&M University, and Coach Emanuel of the soccer team. And I ask both of you, what were some of the concerns you had before the cancellation of how to protect your student athletes and your staff as you proceeded through the season?
I'll go. First of all, thanks for having us on and bringing this to topic. But I guess for me, my major concern was, shoot, I'm 60 years old. They said it was getting the people that was 60 and above, you know? But I think the concern for everybody is just the student athletes and the staff on campus, making sure that, first of all, we're healthy and that these kids are healthy. And of course, they want to be back on campus. They want to play. They want to go to school. They want to enjoy college. But I do agree with the SWAC conference and their decision on postponing things for a little while till we can get this pandemic under control, because this is something none of us has ever faced. Right. And so learning a little bit more about this disease, this virus, will be helpful for everybody, hopefully for in the spring at that point, that we'll be able to return safely and not have to worry so much about the virus.
Okay. Coach Stevens, do you have any thoughts on this?
Yeah, I mean, just some of the same things Coach has said. First of all, thank you. Yeah, I think our girls were, obviously excited about the team that we had put together. And so everybody was excited about trying to come back and improve on what we did last year. But ultimately, I mean, I think everybody said the same thing. You worry about safety, all right? So safety of the players, all right, safety of ourselves. I'm different. I got two small kids, all right? So worried about bringing it home to my two little ones, and all those type of things. So we all try to do the same thing: protect our players, protect ourselves, and so just try to make the best decision. So whatever decision the school and the SWAC was going to go with, we was going to go with them as well, and just try to make the best of it. So now it's just keeping the morale up and keeping them excited about what we have and what we can do, like classes, and making sure all those things go well. Okay. And then looking for the spring.
This question goes to all of you in a way. What are some of the restraints or constraints that you will have this fall? Obviously, no games. We realize that. But if I read it correctly, you're still allowed for your practices, your training, your physical workouts and things across the sports. Is that correct first? Is that correct?
Yes. So, Mike, we have a COVID-19 plan that we're going to adhere to regardless for those teams in. And so at this point, we're determining, making a decision to take a look at what that'll look like. Right now, we won't be doing any practicing in the immediate future, but we'll go and take a look at it once everyone arrives back. We'll get with the coaches, go through our plans, make sure everything is testing okay, and then we would transition into practicing. But currently, it is available to begin your practicing. We're just going to get our plans together and evaluate it as our students get back on campus. And
so not rush into anything? Not
rushing into anything right now, no.
Okay. Coaches, how do you keep your folks motivated during this, as I'll say, slack period? Obviously, this is a great opportunity for them to get in the books. But other than that, how do you keep your students motivated during a time when they're actually right about now preparing for their first game of the season?
Well, I think for my group, we have been doing a lot of Zoom calls, talking to them about the return to play. Also just giving them an opportunity to look at the game a little different. So whenever they do get back on campus, they will look at the game a little bit different, because we're reading some books, finding the mental side of things, looking sometimes just for them to communicate with each other. So when they do come back on campus, they won't be strangers to each other. They'll have to get to know each other, but they're already going to know a lot about each other, because we spend a lot of time on the Zoom calls, just trying to get to know each other before we get on campus, because this is going to be a difficult time, and it's going to be a different look, I should say, and because we won't be able to do much practicing with some of the COVID rules and stuff like that across the state and across everything. You know, you're kind of limited to how many players you can put on the court at the same time, stuff like that. So it's going to look a lot different.
Okay. All right. Coach
And I
Steve?
think people will be excited about the difference. I'm excited about the difference because we as coaches now have to be creative. We have to create some things, make some other things happen. Normally we just be able to go out on the floor and we just do our thing, practice, and no, we can't do that right now. We got to create some different things for the kids.
Well, coaches, you guys go out looking for challenges, so this is another challenge for you to face.
Oh yeah. We weren't looking for this challenge, but we do like challenges. This is a challenge that nobody was ready for. Nobody's ready for this one, but it will be something that I think if we all embrace it, and as long as we stay safe, we'll come up with some new things, be creative. You know, whenever you come out of things like this, you got to come out different.
Coach Stevens, you and your young ladies, how's it look your way?
Yeah, I think like I said before, we were just excited about trying to build on what we've started, and so for me, we've kind of just gave them some space. So I think a lot of this is deal with the mental side. You know, you've worked hard this summer to prepare. My captains have read 3 books. The team has read 2. So we've done a lot of Zoom, like Coach said. We've done a lot of the mental side. Trying to get them all ready for when we return, and then have that taken away. So yeah, it was tough. So for me, it's just giving them some time, let them to enjoy some time with their families. Some of them want to be away from and back to school and back to their normal ways. But trying to let them understand that you need to cherish this time. All right. So I tell them all the time, people that's come, there's going to be some very wealthy and successful people that come out of this time, right? Because there's, in one hand, you'll never get this type of opportunity again to just have so much time on your hands. So what are you doing in this time to make yourself better? To not just a soccer player, but as as a person. So growing. I've started a challenge. I'm on a 52 book challenge for this year. Right? So some of the girls have started some of those things as well. So we just start trying to elevate ourselves in different ways.
Coach Hicks, let me ask you this question. Football has pretty much been told what they're going to do as far as a 6-game schedule, conference schedule, possibly one other game out of conference. What about the other sports? Now, the announcement came out originally. It mentioned that some plans and provisions would be made, but they didn't have anything specifically. Have any decisions been made in that regards with the other sports?
Now, we're still finalizing that, as we alluded to earlier. All of a sudden, now we have about 8 or 9 sports going at one time. So trying to be sure we coordinate the scheduling, it won't be as taxing as a spring semester. We've been working on it and trying to group them the best way. We did have some preliminary plans that we have for all the sports when this first hit. As soon as we came out of it during the summer, and shorten the games, conference only, division only, a lot of different options that we looked at. And then when we made the decision to go to the spring, now we're coming back together to see what does that look like. How does that look for each one of our team, getting our coaches their input, and see what would be the best model to ensure that student athletes would not only have a successful spring semester, but one they can enjoy and look forward to. So we're going to be creative, and hopefully we'll be finalized this here shortly. But as you know, this thing's been changing each and every day. So so it's very fluid. But we'll probably line some things out for the spring semester concerning all the sports here relatively soon.
Now, to our folks that are listening that may not be aware of it, even though these are quote unquote fall sports, especially for soccer and volleyball, I believe volleyball is included, you guys do have a bit of a spring season where you'll go out and play some exhibition, or I should say some scrimmages against other schools and things like that. Is that correct, coaches?
Yes, we have that option to go out and play during the spring, 4 matches or so if we chose to do that. But we do just sometimes just training at that time too.
Okay. So I won't say will there be a difference. Obviously there's a difference because now this becomes a competitive spring. But does this kind of, in a way, I don't know if it helps you or if it hurts you that you go through the fall not playing competitively, but go into a new part of the year with a different mindset?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I think it's just it's going to be exciting if we get to play. So I think all the other things, you know, I mean, we can't change anything that's happening right now. And so at the end of the day, if we're able to play in the spring, then I think everybody is just excited just to get back on the field and play. How many games and all those type of things, you know, obviously the girls ask, and we just tell them the same thing. We'll find out, and we'll figure that out when that time comes. But the biggest goal is just to get back on the field, playing the game that they love, and then really trying to put in work to compete. And so however that works out, if we're competing, you know, for a conference championship, if we're, you know, just playing a regular season with just the conferences, it's fine either way. Obviously, the seniors have a little different view. Just because this is, you know, this will be their last year. But yeah, it's just the biggest goal is just to get back on the field.
I agree with that. Just getting back on the field for the volleyball, on the court for the volleyball team is going to be huge for them. They're ready to get back on the court right now. They're ready to get back to Alabama A&M.
Coach, you mentioned seniors, and I do know that with the academic progress our students are making, that quite possibly you have athletes that were to graduate in December of this year. Have you talked to them? How would you address them as far as staying through the spring, or will they stay through the spring to compete?
I personally don't have any seniors that's going to graduate in December, so we would have to see what's going to happen in the spring for them.
Okay.
Yeah, me neither.
Okay. All right. Well, that's something that you won't have. That's a challenge that we won't have to face.
I don't have to worry about that one.
Coach Hicks, or I'm sorry, AD Hicks, let me ask you this then. When we do have a situation like that where students will be looking at leaving or would normally have left during the winter graduation, what provisions, what exclusions, what exceptions, what are some of the things that we have to consider with those students now?
Well, the NCAA, like for the spring, this past spring, baseball, softball, track, all were cut short. And you saw that the NCAA allowed them to regain their year of eligibility if the institution was able to do it financially, if that went on with the coaches. And what we did, we talked with those. Some want to continue to graduate, some want to say, so the ones that wanted to come back, we met with them and talked with them, and we were able to allow them to come back if they so choose. Okay. Based on the scholarship they were awarded previously. Okay. Going forward, the championship, as you know, Friday, the NCAA Board of Governors, they postponed their decision on their fall championship. So depending on the outcome of that and how that works, I would assume if someone, if any of our sports were graduating, they wanted to come back, it will be a waiver process with the NCAA, and also a process with them and the head coach, both aligning that they're doing the same, wanting to do the same thing. So it's kind of like wait and see for the fall sports, depending on what they decide to do with the championships and what allotments that they give us and waivers they make available to the students.
In a way, because the conference council as a whole, individual schools did not have that decision, didn't have to make that decision. I guess when it comes to the spring, the playing in the spring, you know that you do have a sort of built-in schedule.
Yes.
There are conferences that are working their hardest to make sure that they have sports in the fall. Sometimes some of those games are teams we were scheduled to play against and across the board. What difference does that make now as when we start looking at records and like you said, possible championships and things like that? Obviously, it changes things for a difference it wouldn't be fair, in my opinion, to say that this school now qualifies for a chance to go to the national tournament when they didn't play everybody they were supposed to play to qualify in that position.
That's very much true. So it'll be interesting to see what kind of legislation comes out. Once again, this is the first time in the history since 1918 that something like this ever happened.
Yes.
So they're not going to have the answers right now, I'm pretty sure. And it's going to be hit and miss. But currently, you know, you have to take a look and see what legislation dictates as far as the championship and what would be available. For us in the SWAC, we want to be able to put a conference schedule together, and our student athletes have the opportunity to compete against one another. And hopefully we could crown our conference champion. And that means a lot to our student athletes, you know, being a conference champion and playing against that. Now, what does that mean for us nationally? Obviously that changes. If they continue to play the fall sports in the fall season, obviously we'll miss that opportunity in the fall semester. But if not, you know, it determines what they decide to do moving towards the spring.
Coaches, does this create, and we don't know, but could this possibly create a fatigue factor with you having 2 seasons now in the course of 1 year? When you do have the spring season and then you come back in the fall of 2001 for the regularly scheduled season for that year?
You know, I think that, as I said earlier, that we as coaches are going to now have to be creative. And we're going to have to learn how to manage the loads on the athletes a little bit better, if that be what we have to do. But we still have a summer, several months off before we start back up in August. So we're going to have to learn some different things too, how to manage loads and stuff like that. If a fatigue factor is something that we are worried about. Whereas in the past, we haven't had to worry about a fatigue management factor to manage the load that the kids have on them going forward.
Yeah, for soccer it's a little different, and so obviously coming into school, like our freshmen that are coming in this year, they've played fall and spring seasons with their club teams. You know, they'll play 20, 30 games in the fall and 20, 30 games in the spring tournaments and all those type of things. So they're used to that. And then some of our upperclassmen, they'll go and play for some semi-pro teams and stuff in the summer. So that's around the nation. So for soccer, it really won't be really an issue, because most of them will go and play for their semi-pro teams after our spring season, and then come back in the fall. So yeah. But then also we have a bigger roster this year, so we'll be able to do the same things the coach was just talking about, manage loads and do all those things. But yeah, they just play all the time anyway.
Coach Stevens, we're going to have you on for another show just so you can clear up that semi-pro folks things that you're talking about right there, because I'm sure the folks that are listening from outside are wondering, how does that happen? But just to be sure, that is a legitimate statement. Isn't that correct, Mr. Hicks, that they can participate in this team? We don't want anybody coming back saying we got these professional players playing.
No, they're not professional, not at all.
It's a whole league. There's 2 big leagues in the summer. So all the top players from all the teams are from Auburn, Georgia, Florida. They all play on these teams, and so it's actually you almost say it's it's one of the most competitive things for them to do in the summer, just because they'll get to play against girls from Vanderbilt, maybe on the same team as them, and so they get to get to experience what those things are. So yeah, it's definitely not just us.
Right, I understand. It sounds comparable to the Wooden Bat League up in the Northeast during baseball season that a lot of the college players will go to. We only have a few minutes left, and I'm going to ask Mr. Hicks to wrap this up. But first, if we go a little long, let me thank Coach Powell and Coach Stevens from volleyball and soccer, respectively, for being here with us this afternoon. Truly appreciate you being here, and we'll have to have you guys back just to talk a little bit about your individual sports, especially as we get closer to the season starting in the spring. Mr. Hicks, one of the big questions that I have is, how do we recoup some of the losses that we are going to experience through this fall season from participation with these games?
Well, you know what? That's going to be a challenge. That's why we're having the spring football. You know, we plan to be very creative. What we do in the spring, and then we're going to have to get creative and all across the board in trying to do that. Short term, we'll adjust. Long term is probably the bigger impact as we continue to move forward. So we're going to have do a really good job of balancing the things that we not overextending ourselves, but really making a significant impact in our communities and those who are wanting to support our programs, putting things together that they can attend, and doing some things that we probably never done at Alabama A&M before. And so we're working hard, diligent, putting our minds around it, because I think this landscape is going to be different as we begin to move forward. So preparing ourselves to get, getting things in place and being creative and providing opportunities and different revenue streams for the department. And that's what we'll have to do, create some new revenue streams.
Thank you very much for your candor right there. And I guess the fans also have got to accept the new norm and be prepared to celebrate with us in the spring, as they'll go to a lot of sports here on the campus.
That's right. That's right. We're gonna once we get a little closer finalizing these schedules, we're gonna put together some things. And actually, I think it could be a lot of fun. It could be a lot of energy, and it really bring a lot of morale back to our communities. But first things first, we got to get a control of this pandemic and ensure that our streets are safe. Got to do that.
I want to thank all of you for joining us today on This Week at Alabama A&M. Mr. Bryan Hicks, the Director of Athletics at Alabama A&M University, Head Coach Rose Powell of the Alabama A&M University volleyball team, and Coach Emanuel Stevens of the soccer team at Alabama A&M. Thank you so much. Much success to all of you, rather. And go Bulldogs. We'll talk about it soon.
Yes.
Thank you.
That's going to take care of us for today on This Week at Alabama A&M University.